in the ballpark. All right, everybody. This week's Torah portion has the most mitzvahs of any Torah portion in the entire Torah. Many, almost every verse almost is another mitzvah. So many mitzvahs. As we said that last week, now Moshe is getting practical. The first part of the book of Devarim is Moshe focusing on the ideas. Last week, the tone or the tenor of what was of the narrative has shifted from the ideas and ideals that underpin Judaism to the practical execution of these in daily life and society, in the mitzvahs that we are going to be doing upon establishing the land or conquering the land, etc. And that is why this parsha has more practical mitzvahs, the do's and the don'ts of Judaism, than any other parsha of the Torah. It's interesting that to a certain degree, Moshe here is mirroring what happened earlier on, that once Hashem shared the Ten Commandments in real time, at the actual moment of receiving the Ten Commandments at Har Sinai, the ideals of Judaism, the next parsha is parsha the Eila HaMishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim, and now here are the practical laws. Don't remain in this kind of academic, intellectual, philosophical space. Rather, understand that when we are talking about the ideals of Judaism, we are talking about the way you will actually live your life. And so we do that with the book of Dvarim, many Torah portions that focus on the ideas of Judaism. And now Moshe says you're about to enter into the land. Here is how those ideals inform the practical way a Jew will live their life in a Jewish land under Jewish administration, etc. And so this parsha has the most mitzvahs. Now, the parsha, we could spend a lot of time talking about each of these mitzvahs, and as well we should, and as well we do. That's the whole Talmud, Shulchan Aruch, etc. Is doing just that. Is taking every single mitzvah here in this parsha and every other parsha, and expanding on and talking about what actually how we fulfill these each of these mitzvahs. But the end of this parsha has a very well known classic eternal command to the Jewish people, which is Zachor et asher salacha Amalek. Remember that which Amalek had done to you. Remember them so that you can erase them from memory, which is an interesting thing. Are we supposed to remember them, or are we supposed to erase them from memory? And the answer is we remember them in order to make sure that we never forget that the goal is to erase them from memory. Now, the question is, what exactly did Amalek already do? Because there's many nations that have done horrific things to the Jewish people, even preceding Amalek. So it's not like, well, they hadn't happened yet. There are those nations that had done terrible, horrible things to the Jewish people. Obviously, most famously, the Egyptians. And yet we don't have this command to eradicate them down to the last man, woman, or child, to never forget it until we actually get it done. To using expression that God says, I will forever be at war with Amalek, and I make an oath upon myself, God says. Kiarokes, on my throne, God says, I make an oath that Amalek will have to be eradicated. This costed King Saul his kingdom when he eradicated Amalek down to one final man and missed it by one, and it costed him everything. What is it that Amalek already did? They fought a war against the Jewish people. Many did. They spilled Jewish blood. Many did, significantly more than Amalek did. So what is it? What really is it that triggers this absolute commitment from Hashem, and therefore us, of complete and total focus on annihilation? And the answer comes down to the fact that while many have antagonized, many have done terrible things to the Jewish people, etc. There is a thing that makes Amalek at least unique up until that point in history, and now you can say iterations of Amalek since carry this unique uh, um, quality. Because Amalek remained a nation for a significant period in history, obviously at least till Shaul, right? Shaul went to battle with a cohesive nation called Amalek, right? And his job was to wipe them out, and he was able to put a physical number on them, right? Was able to put a physical number on them and to know that he got it -1. Nowadays, obviously, with everything all mixed up, etc., it's hard to say that there's some nation hiding somewhere in the world on the map that they are Amalek. Rather, iterations of Amalek existed in Persia, right? Exist in other places around the world. What is it? And it comes down to one word. Back in the book of Exodus, where it talks to us about what Amalek did, the confrontation between Amalek and the Jewish people, where God, in the immediate aftermath, said, Kiyad al that I have my hand on my throne, that there will be a war between me and Amalek for all generations. That in that war, in that confrontation, Amalek, there's one word to a certain degree that sets Amalek apart from every other nation that did war with the Jewish people before and after. And it is the word Vayavo. Vayavo Amalek Lihilachem B'Yisrael B'Refidim. And Amalek came to do war with Israel in Refidim. Now, why is that one word so significant? Because this word clarifies for you entirely what motivated Amalek to take on the people that were riding so high that they just took the world's greatest superpower at that time, Egypt, and buried them under the Red Sea. Right? With the vast majority of the Jewish people not lifting a finger. The only thing they had to lift was a foot to walk into the Red Sea. And God so clearly was on their side, was on the side of the Jewish people, that a miracle before all people, right? It says all people bore witness to this. Water split everywhere in the world, which is why it says that even those in the land of Canaan were trembling, because everybody was aware of what had just occurred. So it wasn't like anybody could cry ignorance. Everybody was aware of what God had just done for the Jewish people. So here the Jewish people are writing, and in that immediate space of time, Amalek wages war against the Jewish people. So what would motivate them? What would motivate them to take on such a nation? Because clearly it wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't. In fact, Amalek nearly got wiped out.
I'm gonna
why?
sidetrack you to answer the question. Bear with me. You taught me, I'm sorry, you taught everyone in the congregation a few weeks ago that the question of why did they hate us regarding anti-Semitism was because they do.
1 minute, Paula.
Yeah.
We're not talking about anti-Semitism just yet.
No.
You're going to the natural, but 1 minute. You have to allow. We're first talking about the scriptural context text, and then we'll apply it to the context. But let us first
Didn't
get
you
through
just
this.
ask why? Didn't you just ask
so
why?
I'm saying, but you're a couple steps ahead. But if I entertain,
I'm not making myself clear. I'm not.
No,
I'm saying
no. But Paula, you're
it's
already
not a
heading
question
somewhere.
to ask.
I hear, but it's based on the fact that you're already a couple steps ahead as to where we're leading.
Again, I beg.
You have to. Not everybody is 3 steps ahead in the chess game. Let me
Okay.
get there. Let me
I'll
get there,
stop. Stop.
and then we'll. So, what motivated them? Now, there are numerous things that can motivate somebody to wage war. As we see, war, unfortunately, is very commonplace throughout history. It's hard to find a single nation that hasn't waged a war against another nation. I don't think it even exists. So, what motivates? So, either you're motivated by, in a sense, materialistic gain, right? You're motivated because I want the territory or the resources or whatever it is that you currently have. You're sitting on a tract of land, you are, etc. And so one nation attacks another one because I want your land, or I want your oil, or I want your gold, I want whatever, what have
Power. Too.
you. Well, but when you're attacking power in a sense, consolidating an empire, so that's one reason. The other reason is that you feel threatened by a particular people or by a particular entity. Which is why for many other nations went to war with the Jewish people, because when the Jewish people started coming by, including the Egyptians, whether warranted or not, that's why they felt a need to try to subjugate the Jewish people, because they felt threatened by the presence of the Jewish people. Jewish people were there in their backyard, in the land of Goshen. They were a burgeoning population in their midst, as they said. This is our motivation for attacking the Jewish people. So you have threat, you have materialistic gain, etc. It could be, and I attacked you because you have an insult, right? Because you insulted, you did something, right? You go back to medieval times in Europe, and it could simply be that the prince of this nation insulted the daughter of this king and whatever it is, and they went to war for it. Whatever, what have you? You have all various motivations. Amalek had none of these motivations. Amalek had none
Arrogance.
of these motivations.
Was it arrogance?
It was not
Hubris?
even arrogance.
They
They did not expect to win.
didn't believe in God. They rejected God.
Oh, they didn't reject God. They knew God. They hated God. And they hated his people. That was the only thing they stood to gain. In other words, nothing. They were not looking to gain anything. For the first time, you were fighting a war you were going to lose. You knew you were going to lose. And you were fighting it not because you were hoping to gain anything, but because I hate you so much that I'm willing to lose more than you will. But just the hope of causing you to at least lose something. That is a level of such complete hate where I go on self-sacrifice. I sacrifice myself just to cause you to lose. Think about the level of hate that takes.
We have some here too.
Well, now we're finally arrived, Paula, right? Okay. But we needed to paint this.
Okay.
What's the point? Because Amalek had to travel. They were nowhere near, the Jewish people were nowhere near them. The Jewish people didn't have any land for Amalek to gain. There was no threat that the Jewish people posed directly to Amalek, we weren't getting anywhere near. They packed up their whole army, traveled a great distance to fight a war they knew they were going to lose. Why? Against a nation that if they would ignore, they would never encounter again. Yet they deliberately sought out this confrontation that was going to cost them nearly everything. Why? Because they couldn't stand the idea that God had chosen a nation and they wanted to cut that nation in whatever, cut them down a peg, drop them a peg.
No. It's
Not sure what
stop.
happened. Maybe
Okay,
you're
Amalek
back.
got to it.
Don't
He was
you
listening
dare.
in.
Yeah.
He's worried that you're telling us the story.
Yeah. But that is humanity's greatest flaws taken to its most extreme. That's hate at its blackest.
Mhm.
And God is basically telling us that there is no redeeming quality to that. The only thing that could be done with that is it be erased. Your mission, of Jewish people, as being a light unto nations, is to erase that condition from the human being. That has to disappear. Pure, senseless hate that has no redeeming quality, no validity, no even perverted validity, where these people glorify in the fact, I don't plan to gain anything. In fact, I know I'm going to lose. In fact, I know I'm going to lose more than my enemy will lose. There's a very dramatic kind of anecdote in which a king had two ministers who both were a tremendous help to his kingdom, but these two were such bitter and sworn enemies that it was sabotaging every effort that the king was trying to do. He was trying to get these two, and it was end up making just chaos, infighting, and everything. So he called one of them over, and he wanted to impart to him that if you can just allow for the existence of the other, you yourself will benefit. And so he turned to this fellow, and he said to him, I would like to give you whatever you want. The one caveat is that your enemy gets double. So you're going to have to be able to live with the fact that your choice means that your sworn enemy gets twice as much. But you will get. Hi, everybody. I'm back. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to switch. I'm going to have to switch to. Does everybody hear me? Does anybody hear me?
Yep, he's
He's
back.
moving. He's moving.
I'm switching to my phone's Wi-Fi
Okay.
Okay.
so that I can see if I can get a more stable connection.
Okay.
Anyways, but so this king,
Yeah.
the king says you're gonna have to live with him, right? Everybody sees me. I'm still coming through.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was the answer of this advisor? All right, this Gabriel just texted me. So $1 million, right? This guy, his friend's gonna get $2 million, right? A palace. This friend is gonna get 2 palaces. So it was driving him crazy. So he comes back to the king and he says, poke out one of my eyes. And the anecdote is to make a point of how far hate could drive somebody,
Mm.
right? I'm willing to lose as long as that guy loses more. And that's not, and that story, how horrific it is actually not even the full extent of Amalek. Amalek goes further. What would happen if the king says that your friend gets half? And the guy says, then poke out both my eyes. So at least that guy gets one eye poked out. That's Amalek. Can you imagine the level of hate that is? It's hard to even fathom.
I see it.
Unfortunately, that does exist. And as has been talked about at length, it was recently and again, and I don't mean as, but recently again pointed in the direction of the Jewish people. We face a lot of hate, but that level of black hatred, of truly a fathomless hatred. Now, I don't want to get into politics, and I don't want to sit here, and definitely not on this recording, but to the extent, but I will say, I think that it is fair to say, and after when we're off the recording, I can further elaborate because I want for people to speak freely. It will not happen now because we're already over time, but that I maintain that in this context, and for a long time now, Amalek is not a specific group of people that make up a nation. It is a cancer, a spiritual cancer that an individual or an entire group can be taken over by. Now you can debate, how many of is it an entire nation that has been taken over by this cancer? Is it whatever? Is it a leadership? Has a younger generation been indoctrinated, and perhaps could potentially be the next generation be indoctrinated out of it or heal? I don't want to go there. Not in this talk, whatever it is, because it's a very delicate matter, etc. But we don't serve a purpose or a mission in ignoring the potential that Amalek exists. It is our responsibility as part of being a light unto nations to banish the dark. To banish the dark, to be vigilant about the fact that darkness of this caliber can and does exist. And we need to, when we see it, we need to be unequivocal about it. Because it is antithetical to the light. And because unless it's addressed like a cancer, it is incredibly insidious and it can metastasize and grow and spread. However, I will also say that the level of this darkness, to come to the level of Amalek, just as back then it was a singular nation, rear in its composition. It wasn't the majority of the world, although many of the people in the world did battle and fought, and many of them, even in Egypt, which had no right to be that suspicious and hateful of the Jewish people. Still, the Torah is careful not to label them and their hate Amalek. Because there is a difference between the depth of hatred that defines Amalek and other senseless hate. There is other iterations of senseless hate that is not the depth of Amalek. And to them, the approach has to be different. And then there are nations that are confused, like we have today also. People that are confused and are useful idiots. Because while they have an opinion, it is not a cogent or researched one. And they're going along with the zeitgeist. And sometimes the zeitgeist is philo-Semitic or philo-Israel. Like in 1967, in the aftermath of the Six-Day War. And sometimes the zeitgeist is the other direction. And we have to be careful to not fall into recency bias and into the doom and gloom rhetoric. We need to remain ever vigilant because there are hateful people. And it doesn't just take an Amalek. It could be somebody who has a more benign version of hate, but is in possession of the ability to harm us and will do it. That could be a greater threat to us than Amalek, as many nations have that have never been an Amalek, but yet have caused us significantly more harm. Like, for example, Egypt caused a lot more harm to the Jewish people than Amalek did. You don't have to have the harm that can be caused is not necessarily defined by the depth of the hate, which means sometimes the same way you have to be vigilant for Amalek, you also have to be vigilant because you have ushmartem al shotechem from those who hate you less, but are in a greater position to do your harm. You have a responsibility to be vigilant for all these things. You also should take the time to appreciate that this world is God's garden and that God has embedded within human beings, that he has created in his image, an innate capability and element to be good and to be a reflection of God himself in that regard. So, how do you go about your business? You go about your business just like that, by understanding that the world is a complex place and that um, um, we have a responsibility not just to stand guard for Amalek, but to stand guard for anything and everything that could threaten us, including those that mean us well and will kill us softly through love, or what they think is love, what they perceive as love. As, by the way, the Alter Rebbe was very vigilant and concerned about the general egalitarianism that was going to be brought in by Napoleon. But the Jewish people hadn't yet built up an immune system to preserve their Jewish identity in the face of an embrace and a welcome into general culture. And the Alter Rebbe says we need to be vigilant about that. So by no means am I at all endorsing the ostrich mentality. By no means am I endorsing the Kahana mentality. I am saying very, what's it called? That you need to take each circumstance with the nuance and gravitas that the Torah demands of you. Torah demands of you to be a steward over his garden. And the garden is not just your Jewish neighborhood. The garden is everywhere in the world with everybody in it. And you have a responsibility to try and make it flourish. At the same time, to know that there are snakes in this garden. And some of them are more poisonous than others. And to also be aware of an absolute destructive cancer within the garden that has yet to be properly dealt with.
And is being exported. Let's remember that, please.
Yeah, it's being metastasized. Now, again, we have to be careful to to not put on dark colored glasses, which is to see everything shades darker than they really are. And the Torah teaches us this nuance. Again, so it would be very easy to paint all those that we have grievances within history in that land. We were enslaved for 210 years by a particular nation. And the Torah goes out of its way to say, don't hold them back, because there is hate and there is harm and there is whatever it is that is not Amalek. And
Right.
you have to be vigilant about that as well, but not Amalek. And so we have to um, 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 lend this general topic the nuance and gravitas that it warrants. We can't be ambivalent to it, as too many people would like to. Too many people would like to just say, okay, it's not my problem. I don't do that. No, no. That is not allowed, not just simply because you have to make sure to be vigilant and protect yourself, but also because we do have a job to be a light unto nations, which includes abolishing the darkness. Timcha et zecher Amalek. We have that mitzvah, every single one of us. Again, it doesn't say timchu, it doesn't say you as a general populace shall do it, so you'll appoint the one guy who doesn't. No, timcha as an individual. We each have a responsibility. If you're going to be a light bringer, then simultaneously you're a darkness abolisher. And to know to a certain degree that if this is something that to a certain degree sneaks its tendrils potentially everywhere, it can also sneak its tendrils into us. And elements of this absolute darkness might be in us as well. Not that we've been taken over for it, God forbid. I can personally attest to every single person here in this class that they are wonderful sources of light to this world. Not a one of them is this, but can we be with absolute certainty that elements of unwarranted and not even senseless, but sacrificial, self-sacrificial hate. Because if you have one end of the spectrum, if you can self-sacrifice for love, and you see that's the cost. God created everything with its mirror opposite in this world. And if Hashem has embedded into us the capacity to sacrifice in the name of love, then what that means is that in this world also exists the element to sacrifice for the sake of hate. And that's Amalek. That's what
jihad.
Amalek is. What?
That's jihad.
As I said, I'm going to for the sake of the class, and I'm not going to get what's it called? I'm not going to get into kind of the politics of the day, because the point and people will take as, but that does exist. And the Torah says you need to be cognizant of it. You need to wage war against it. And know to a certain degree that your job of bringing light into this world is not complete until this has been removed in ourselves, in those around us, in the world. So I think my coming back in a sense to what we were talking about. my position that on the main, Hein am levadad yishkon, the fact that we are a nation that will dwell alone, it doesn't mean we'll dwell alone in animosity. I don't believe that. Because the Torah could have said it that way, and it doesn't. And I don't think God would want that for us, especially if He has made it our job to be to influence the world. So I don't believe that God created a general as a rule that this verse speaks to an instinctual animosity, because again, then God is being self-defeating. What He has engineered into all of humanity is that we will be singular in the fact that we will be singular. People, no other nation automatically has everybody's attention in the way that Israel and the Jewish people do. Everybody has an opinion. And the blackest among people will have the blackest opinions about Israel, even if they've never encountered them. Even if their paths will and have never crossed them, will never cross. But this will be a manifestation of their natural instinctual hate, that they will hate, and they will hate loudly, and they will hate vociferously. And therefore, oftentimes the loudest voice in the room, if you have 100 people in the room and 2 people are booing really loud, that's a lot of negative noise in the room. And that does, and on top of that, if you have even 1,000 people in a crowd, and one person hates you, only one person, but that person has a method to harm you, then you need to be cognizant about it, and you need to protect yourself against such an eventuality. And so the knowledge of the fact that once we've accepted upon ourselves the fact that we will be God's chosen nation, chosen to be a light unto the rest of them, means that instinctually the rest of the nation's attention is oriented towards us. We will be a magnet to people's attention, to people's opinions, etc., so that we can be the influence that we have accepted the mission from God to be. But what that comes with that, the price tag, is that everybody has an opinion. And if somebody is a naturally hateful person, they will have a hateful opinion. And there's nothing that you could do differently that would change that for such a person. Now, there are certain people that are not naturally hateful, but they are naturally lazy. So they're not going to take the time to formulate an opinion. And if the loudest voice in the room is saying that these people are horrible, terrible people, then they'll go along with it because I'm too lazy to actually form a cogent opinion, to go study and research the details and the nuances. And I'm hearing a lot of voices that are saying that these people are terrible. So, okay, so if they're terrible, I guess they're terrible. Why? Because my neighbor says so. And so the voices grow. And so that, to a certain degree, is the symptom, I believe. And
So it can make your
instead of
different.
what?
Sometimes your thoughts, though, get in the way of your ability to be calm or to be, whatever that.
So here's the good advice. Here's the good advice. And this is why I think it's important to articulate this. Because you now have a choice. If you think that everybody by default hates you, then what that generally engenders is walk into your fortress, close up the door, protect yourself, protect those that you love, because you're not going to do anything to change anybody anyway, no matter what. They hate you, so sail to your island fortress and lock the door behind you. if the general perspective is everybody has an opinion about you, then the haters are going to hate. And they're going to try to influence other people to hate you. But you actually you were chosen to be the chief influencers. Then don't sail to your island and lock the door. Don't build a fortress. Build a lighthouse. Don't lean away from from the problem. Lean in to the problem. And understand that it might be harder because it's easier to go along with the zeitgeist. But God never promised us that it's going to be easy. But if people are influenceable, as the haters have shown, then they can be influenced for the good. We are not trying to influence those that are so hateful that they can't see reason.
Well, that's what happens though sometimes. They are so
Yeah, there
that
are,
they
as I said, there is the acknowledgement that there are going to be those people. That's not
Right.
our primary focus. Our primary focus are on the greater segment of humanity
Right.
that maybe at present have been influenced the wrong way. But again, that indicates that they're influenceable. And not to spend time on Twitter or whatever it is and say, and not to spend time on you shouldn't hate us because of this reason or that reason or whatever it is. Influence in terms of what we are meant to have been influencing them about from the beginning. For example, what I mean by this is a mother is trying to convince their child to eat healthy. And the child, "Oh, I hate you, you're so terrible, you're so mean." Now, the mother or father could spend time saying, "No, I'm not so mean. Here, let's talk about it. Let me talk about why I'm not so mean. I'm really not that mean. I'm gonna no." What rather the parent is going to do is say, "Let's stay on topic. This is good for you." So, and a parent sometimes understands, look past the narasha noise, the foolish noise, or whatever it is. Continue to be a light. Continue to be a source of morality and ethics and goodness. Lean into it. If people are paying attention, continue doing the right thing. And maybe turn it
Rabbi,
up a notch. Turn up the volume on. But
aren't there two ways to do this, though?
in what sense?
I think what you're saying now is reaching out. And what I'm suggesting as another possibility is leading by example, not by reaching out. And I wanted to know your feeling about that in this case.
Should you reach out or should you lead by example? The answer is
Yes. I know.
But
Okay.
it's important to
exactly
hear
the
all
correct
points.
answer. The
I think
answer is, or as always in yeshiva, it depends. Is this a person, or is this an agenda, or is this a circumstance where reaching out directly in a way of netzach is going to carry the day, or maybe it's the hod, right? Which is to, is to lead by example, let the person come to you, right? David HaMelech versus Shlomo HaMelech. David HaMelech went and he pushed his agenda. Shlomo HaMelech never left Israel, never fought a single war. People came to him. The answer is there are times for this and there are times for that. Lakol zman ve'et.
Is it the times in the same person, or is it different people? I am a person who leads by example. This is a person who leads by outreach.
Well, you could do either. It could
Ah,
be depending upon what
Back
you're
to the
dealing
same point. Don't be absolutist in either. We all have our predispositions,
Uh-huh.
which is not wrong. Everybody has to
Uh-huh.
play to their strengths. And God put
Uh-huh.
these particular strengths for a reason. You have this strength for a reason, that strength for another reason. Don't be absolutist about it.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
but play to your
Sure.
strengths, sure.
Okay.
But the point of the matter is, again, if your general attitude is that the world hates you for whatever it does and there's not much you can do about it, then in fact, the greatest solution is get into your fortress, lock the door behind you. But if you understand,
We got
for the
part of
most
that.
part,
We can.
for the most part,
He looks
that
very
the people you will encounter are people that you can have a positive impact on. And the haters are loud, vociferous, but the minority. And they are trying to influence the same people you're trying to influence. And you're not trying to influence them on Israel and Israel's morality and Israel's ethics. You have a job to be a light in general. And of course, Israel's part of that, etc. But don't get mired in the arguments, in the silly arguments. They want you there. That's where they want you. They want you in the mud with them. You're staying, I'm a light bringer. I don't have time for these petty arguments. I'm going to keep it. I don't have time to argue politics. Who's going to be a better president? Is not going to be a better president. Of course, we all have to make these decisions. We all have to go to vote. We all have to. We also in this. Don't spend the majority of your time on the narishkeit. If certain elements of this are important as part of the greater agenda, by all means, don't miss the trees for the forest. But also, don't miss the forest for the trees. Remember what the general overall agenda is. Stay true to that agenda. Understand that the world's eyes are upon you.